emotionally, but we weren't impacted as a business. And we started noticing our friends and our peers were having a really hard time transitioning. I mean, some of them didn't even have their systems set up to be able to access the files and the tools that they needed to do their job. And so with that, we wanted to start this webinar and share it for more from a product development perspective. And we really wanted to focus on like our tools and our techniques. We want to focus on communication, collaboration, and innovation as a team. I do want everyone to be aware that we are recording this webinar so we can share it to you afterwards, and also share it out to wider audience to see who might be interested, for those that have missed our panel today. And so I'm just going to jump right into introductions. So the first introduction is Adam. He's our VP of Product Dev. He has 20 plus years in software, medical device, and clinical applications for companies like Zeiss, Roche, and Bio-Rad. Eileen Heller, she's our VP of Operations with 18 years in service and engineering consulting for companies like Invitech and NV5. Nikita, she's our Scrum Master product owner with 6 years experience with AI, next generation sequencing, and platform development. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in, starting with Eileen. So Eileen, since you've been with Beanstock Ventures the shortest amount of time, how has the virtual environment changed your experience from the typical conference room face-to-face?
So the main difference is obviously you're not sitting around a table, but essentially it's the same process of setting up a meeting, making sure you have the right tools, the right attendees, and the ability to use video really helps with the collaboration and getting that face-to-face. I think in some cases it's more collaborative for a virtual meeting because you can share each other's screens. So if someone has an idea and you're talking about, instead of just having a PowerPoint on one screen in a conference room or switching HDMI cables or that type of thing, you have the ability to just quickly click a button and share. So it's a more efficient, I feel, than just a conference room.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about it from that perspective. Like when we go online, a lot of times we're like, well, let me show you what I'm looking at. And okay, well, let me show you my dashboard. And it requires a lot of different sources of information when we're communicating. And it takes a lot of effort to put that on a PowerPoint. And we tend not to use PowerPoint very much. We usually like go online and then we're like looking at the actual source information. We're looking at code directly, or we're looking at financial files directly. So that's a really good point. When we first started as a virtual company, I noticed, and we noticed, like an increase in communication. At first, it was a lot of communication through email, and we had a lot of missed opportunities and miscommunication, and quite a bit of confusion initially. So Nikita, can you share like some effective communication tools or techniques you've used to ensure the right people have the right information at the right time?
Definitely. I think, as you mentioned, initially it was a little bit hard. But then as we established our ways and workflows and just our way of working, I think we found out what works best for our team. Our team likes to collaborate using Microsoft Teams rather than emails, or they prefer just giving them a call if there's anything urgent. Like just identifying what works for your team has helped us align our communication better and making it more effective.
Thank you, Nikita. I know for me personally, when I start experiencing the Uber communication, I feel very fatigued, annoyed, and inefficient. And I was getting that from some of our peers that went straight from brick and mortar to a virtual environment. They're like, I'm really tired because the meetings are now back to back and there's no break in between. Normally when you go brick and mortar, you have a bathroom break or whatever. But when you're virtual, you tend to, if you have back-to-back meetings, it's just one right after another, and it does tend to get exhausting. Adam, can you touch on the negative effect of Uber communication and how to identify and address it if it's happening in one's company?
Yeah, but let me maybe go back to what both Eileen and Nikita said. I think a fully virtual company is actually a total equalizer, right? Coming in the Bay Area with a huge amount of commute, a lot of the high-tech companies, they allow you to work a day or two from home, but there's always a mix of some team members are in the meeting room and a few are calling in, and there's a different vibe, a different culture if you're remote. Here now that we are fully remote, it makes everybody equal, right? There's no subcultures in an office. It's all the same. And I think that's actually a strong advantage. And I prefer that scenario over normal company where once in a while you work a day or two from home. From the negative side, yeah, I think over communication can totally be a time drain, right? So you write, you read email, you communicate then more formal, and often it happens when there's a lack of trust, and that can go in both directions, from the leadership, from the management side to the team members and back up. And often I believe there's a compensation with over communication to overcome that lack of trust, which I don't think is actually very helpful.
Yeah, can we touch on that a little bit more, like the trust aspect of it? I know we've hired some people from brick and mortar, and initially there's like, well, how do I know what someone's doing? Can we like share everyone's calendar? And because I truly wanted to be a virtual company, my answer was no. We're not going to share everyone's calendar, but we're going to trust that people are going to do and deliver on what they say they're going to commit to. So how do you think we've done in terms of overcoming that barrier and learning to trust our team?
I think we still, like any other non-virtual company, you still have plans and strategies, and you still have objectives, long-term, short-term, sometimes even daily, when we work in our agile Scrum environment with our daily stand-ups. So you have a level of accountability, and you still can manage that with regular communication instead of Uber communication.
Thank you. So now on to the topic of collaboration. We've heard a few times from our brick and mortar employees that working with our team has been the most engaging and collaborative environment they've experienced. Eileen, what do you think makes Beanstock Ventures unique in that respect?
So I think the virtual environment that we use it was new to me. I mean, I'm pretty tech savvy, so it wasn't hard to get used to using it, but having people show you where things are, how to use the tools, how the tools are used, that the way we use the tools are defined and that we use them effectively was very helpful to me coming on. So I think it's really easy to say you're virtual and everything's in the cloud, but if you're not really used to using the tools like that, or how the communication or collaboration tools are being used for your company, then it would have been harder to overcome or get used to it if I was just left to my own devices. So I think that was a successful way for me to come up to speed quickly.
Yeah, and I think we're still growing in that area where we've identified where sometimes we have information in multiple places because of the way our tools are configured. And so now we're starting to align that more to say, okay, this is where this needs to go. And so now we have an intuitive, some sort of organization structure and some rules defined around where that information should live. And I know that we didn't start that way. Initially, it was like, where's this? Where's that? And there was duplication everywhere just because people weren't in the office to ask, like, where's the expense report template, right? And now we've created some structure around that so everyone knows where everything should go. So everything has a home.
And it's back to that Uber communication. You would send me a link and I'd be like, I know you sent it to me and I'm going crazy, I can't find it. And it was in like a chat channel versus in my email, or, so getting used to the environment helps you remember where somebody sent you something to. So.
And Adam, I know you've identified ways that you think we can do better in terms of collaboration. Can you share with us some of your ideas that you're piloting and the results you're seeing so far?
Yeah, just piggybacking on the most recent topic, we recently leverage more Microsoft Teams. So when you set up Shauna Beanstock, you started using the Office 365 system, which is fully cloud-based, and similar like Google Docs and other tools. You can collaborate very easy on your documents. And that system includes Microsoft Teams, which has similar like Slack, which is maybe more popular, tools for channels and communication within your teams that's not distracting to others. You can have micro channels, and each of these channels, they come up with their own SharePoints and data structures, which help us to organize exactly those files that we were just talking about. Another thing that we're starting new is we're encouraging more and more also everybody to turn on their video cameras. It's easy when you work from home, you get up, you sit in your pajamas all day. Maybe that's not ideal. You still want to turn on your video to build that personal relationship. And that helps also a little bit to see if everybody is paying attention to your meetings. I noticed that from the past, even when you had your meetings in meeting rooms, so many people were working on their smartphone under the desk and not paying attention to the meeting themselves, or multitasking on their laptop. And now with having short meetings and video on, I think that helps collaborating better.
As an organization, we also still value face-to-face. So even though we are virtual, we still think face-to-face is essential. It's an essential part of communication collaboration. And we do this through something that we created. We created what we call like project and company summits. So Adam, can you explain what the project summits are and what purpose it serves?
Yeah, the project summits, this is a time typically every 3 months, but it depends on the type of client project that we have, where we get together as a team with our clients and review the past work and plan and strategize on the future work. Also, we are an agile company, and this is a good moment where technical team members as well as business team members come together, and we can pivot the strategy a little bit based on the business needs. So that's part of our Beanstock partnership and working as a collaborative team member with our client.
Nikita, what are some of the benefits you've seen as a team member participating in these summits?
I think they have been great. We usually like plan for 3 months, 3-month duration, and it kind of helps because since our team is virtual, it helps to meet everyone and be on the same page, make short-term goals, and do a lot of planning as a team together. I also think that like just because we are a virtual team does not mean that we don't meet and plan stuff. Like obviously we do, but whether you're a brick or mortar company or not, nowadays everyone uses the same tools pretty much, and everything is online. Whether you're doing collaboration, whether you're doing planning, whether you're doing meetings, whether you're signing documents, like we have tools for everything, and it is online. So it really, I feel like we'll definitely see a shift, especially for tech companies, going more and more virtual.
Eileen, can you comment on our company level summits? And the intent of our company level summits is to foster a sense of community and to help build our corporate culture. That's sense of community is probably one of the bigger challenges with being virtual. Eileen, can you comment on our company summits?
Yeah, sure. So like Nikita said, face-to-face is, it's still very valuable. And so on a quarterly basis, we meet as an entire company. Everyone comes in from wherever they're at, and we get an opportunity to have, we have a set agenda, we have breakout sessions, we have the internal team presenting, we go over quarterly results, we go over targets and, KPIs, and, we just do basically like a company summit meeting. So, we go out to dinner, we go out to lunch, and we get an opportunity to just be in the same room. So it's no different than the corporate meeting, right? But it's kind of more fun because we don't get to see each other very much. So it's nice to be able to be all in the same room. And
yeah, we always have like a team building aspect to it as well. Something I think we did, the first one we did our missions and our corporate values, and then the other one we did, gosh, I can't remember, what was the other one?
Dave & Buster's.
Oh yeah, we did Dave & Buster's. So we always do something fun as a result of that to kind of get to know each other. Oh, we did Strengths Finders, so we did that activity. Everyone went around and kind of shared their results and talked about how it influences and relates to the mission and vision of the company and themselves personally. So we did a lot of like connecting with the team face to face. So we don't do those things virtually. We do those things face to face. Nikita, you talked about tools. Can you elaborate a little bit about some of the tools you've used or techniques and how it's different than collaborating in person?
So for our team, like for project planning, we use Microsoft Project and Jira. Really, if you look at it, it's not too much different from a brick and mortar company, really. but we communicate a lot using Teams. And there are a lot of really cool apps in Microsoft framework as well as outside of it for just collaboration, for discussions, for meeting with your team, for designing, even just whiteboarding. You can share your screen and draw diagrams and just put your thoughts up there. Even tools like Trello to help with your project management plan. And like, I think it kind of helps us to be on the same page, all these different tools and collaboration platforms that are out there to just work effectively and not be focused on just the fact that, oh, we are online. You know, it pretty much is like mentally we are there, we are together. So yeah.
One thing I started noticing, being virtual and wanting to automate everything, there's almost like a plugin and a tool for everything. So anything you can think of, you can find it.
Yeah.
Whether it's secure and you know, corporate level, whatever, that's a different question. But you can find tools to help you automate and plug into these environments. I think Teams, we were online one day and we saw there was a whiteboard app now, or a whiteboard link, and so we started playing around with that. We're like, oh, this is neat. We can use this now. And so the tools are evolving to support virtual productivity. They're just getting better and better. And the more we use them and get comfortable with them, the more it's going to become kind of just the status quo. Now on to innovation. And so with kind of being virtual, there's this perception that if you're innovating, that you need to be co-located. And so we did an exercise recently that was 100% virtual innovation session, and it resulted in over 20 unique viable ideas. We down selected to 7, and we ultimately picked 1 that we're focusing on, that we're working on as a team. Nikita, can you describe what that process looked like, and why do you think it was so successful?
So we spent like 30 minutes, 45 minutes as a team really for ideation, and we came up with like 10, 20 ideas pretty much. And I think it was so successful because we are all working from different parts of the country. In fact, sometimes even different parts of the world. And we look at the world in a different way. We have different ideas. We get exposed to different kinds of information rather than all of us just sitting in one building and agreeing to the same idea or thinking in the same way. I think just having the fact that we are scattered all around helps us to come up with new and innovative ideas. So I really think being virtual kind of helps in that regard.
Yeah, I also noticed that there was less like, you know, you always say, okay, we're gonna do brainstorming and no idea is a bad idea, but there was less commentary because people were able to add their ideas and then enhance and then add on to it because they weren't having that kind of group think mentality or looking at other people for approval. The ideas were just kind of flowing. And then when we looked at it, we mapped them all out and we're able to then consolidate them. And I think our final idea wasn't even actually on there. I think it kind of morphed from the data that we had on that original activity. Adam, can you elaborate a little bit about your perception of that activity?
Yeah, I agree. We had the final idea was actually a mix out of a cluster of 3 ideas that we identified in our workshop. The workshop was planned a little bit, had a little bit structure, but since everybody was remote, everybody could work on the same tool. We used Microsoft PowerPoint and had Mimic for Post-it stickers, so everybody could put up their sticker on the page and at the same time, basically, and then we clustered them and worked them through. I think what I liked as a team, there was a lot of respect, similar what Nikita said. Nobody talked over each other. There was not that one very vocal person who was always in front of the whiteboard and scribing or writing. Everybody was equal. Again, what I said almost earlier, it was an equalizer that we all remote and had access at the same tools at the same time.
So going back to co-location, so despite being a software company, we're by nature virtual, right? Software by nature virtual. We support medical device development. So we have to interact with the hardware. It's essential, basically. And so device access, as you all know, is typically scarce. A lot of times the systems aren't portable or they're very, very expensive or they're shared by multiple people. And so we've come up with a way to use modern technology so that we can overcome that barrier. Adam, can you explain how product development teams that rely on hardware can be effective virtually?
Yeah, we've done this even in previous companies where we were not a virtual company, but just we had different distributed teams focusing on different areas. And we focus really on the interfaces, right? Maybe you've heard about Conway's law that design companies, they build systems that have a similar architecture that the organizational architecture or the organizational communication structure has. That's because teams together, they work together, and that's how they build their interfaces and their systems. We now could take that as an advantage since we don't have these co-located teams. We can build our teams to exactly meet our architectural needs. I think that was definitely an advantage. So we were focusing in our discussions on interfaces, how it helps building the system, software and hardware, and using then in our software world simulation tools to be very independent of the hardware. In our agile world with fast iterations and a lot of test automation, that really helps keeping the quality much higher actually than spending manual time in front of an instrument.
Yeah, I think the key is defining those interfaces up front and getting agreement across the team. And also from an architectural perspective, really identifying the roles and responsibility of each of the subsystems. Like with software, you saying, okay, from a simple example, fan perspective, we're going to just control it on off. That's all we want to do. Firmware is going to be doing everything else, right? Or vice versa. Firmware is going to be, just giving you raw signal readings, and the software is going to be interpreting that and doing whatever it needs to do. So those contracts or that agreement needs to be defined up front. And then it's very easy to create then a simulator that works in between the firmware and the hardware and the software and the firmware to be able to basically test all the core functionality. So at the end, when you're putting it on a system, you're just left with the system, real true system issues, which is like latency and stuff like that. Maybe something electromechanical in terms of ranges of motion and stuff like that. But even with proper testing, those things could have been weeded without actually running the final software application. I know we just ended a huge project. It's a 2-year project. It was a very complex instrument with fluidics, imaging, electromechanical, automation, all that, you name it. And we had an activity to do the software development. We didn't have access to the instrument, so we did put emulators and simulation in place and did a lot of testing and definition of what that API, that interface is going to look like. And when we put it on the machine, we had 3 days to integrate. It took us 3 days to integrate and get it functioning. Prior to that, they had done it a little bit differently prior to that, and it took them about 6 weeks. Right. And so we weren't focusing on software bugs, we were focusing on true integration issues. And the whole team was there just driving those changes really quick to make sure that the software, firmware, and hardware were all working together. And because they had planned to integrate these things, separate, but then together, it really helped reduce that integration time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's not that we don't integrate; we still integrate, but it usually gets much faster, and also it's a less burden on the client because we have less integration time. We need the system for fewer hours or days.
Correct, and they can use it for other testing that they need it for. That's not software specific.
Yeah, I think it's really making us efficient, and we think in a way that, okay, even if we do get some time on the instrument, how can we make it make the most of it and be most efficient? And that's definitely a skill to acquire.
Yeah, we've also done other things too, like remote access, right, to be able to debug remotely onto the system. And obviously some organization around timing people as well. And so we had software developer on the East Coast, which worked out quite well because if we had something we found like in the evening, then they would go and fix it in the morning. And then by the time we came, then it was all up and ready to get retested. And so we had some of that in to our advantage as well, actually having the remote team and having, someone on different time zones that was beneficial in our case. Well, we leveraged it, right? We took advantage of that. So I also have a funny story too to share. When I started Beanstock Ventures in 2018, I hired a team of 12 people, all virtually. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't. And I didn't even know what they looked like. And I never even met them in person. until 3 months later when we had our first summit, because we said, look, we need to get together. We need to immerse the team. We do something we call immersion. That's part of our summit, where we really get together and understand, okay, here's the objectives for the next 3 months. And everyone's completely on board. It's business objectives and also the delivery focused on the project. And really, again, we include lunch and team building and all that as part of the project planning as well. And then at the end, we have a clear, like, kind of roadmap of what we're going to do for the next 3 months. So that was kind of an interesting thought. When I thought about it, I was like, okay, well, how is virtual, being virtual going to affect recruiting? I'm like, so Eileen was director of HR at NV5, last year. And so she has experience, obviously, in the human resource side. So Eileen, can you touch on how the practice, the hiring practice, is now encouraging innovation and diversity inclusion through being virtual, just by nature of being virtual?
I think, just in your circumstance, you vetted candidates based off their experience, based off communication, based on conversations, and you really remove that bias, right? It's human nature to have a bias when you're interviewing someone, whether you don't like how they dress, you don't like their hair, you didn't like their mannerisms, but it eliminates all of that, which shouldn't come into play. It's one of the hardest things to get hiring managers to not focus on, and to really focus on capabilities. And so now I think probably virtual companies will probably use video going forward, but I think it's important when you're building a virtual team that they have and are comfortable using the tools that we use every day, all day long. So I think it's an important aspect to have a familiarity and being comfortable with the virtual tools. But I think in your case, you just removed all the bias that could have influenced you maybe not hiring some of the people on the team that you did.
And I think, like, you can see that in our team. Our team is so diverse, and we've got so many compliments from the clients on this. Really, like, I think that's part of it, that we are virtual, and there's no bias in hiring, only your qualification and your experience.
Yeah, and then when you meet them 3 months later and you don't like their hair or their ponytail or something, it's irrelevant because they're performing, right? And if they're not performing, then you're judging, you're basically assessing based on job performance and not how they look or talk or dress or anything like that. This is kind of interesting to reflect back on that.
Yeah.
Let's see if we have any questions from the audience. Let me see. We have a question here. Okay, we have a question. My company is remote now because of the current situation. We are missing out on some of the social aspects. Do you ever do anything fun virtually?
So I can talk to that. So pre-COVID, Nikita and I had lunch, and she's like, oh, we need to do like a meetup. And I think Shauna, you and I had talked about it too, do something fun. And I said, okay, well, let's just pick every third Thursday of the month, and we'll plan something, coffee, lunch, a hike, something that gets all the local team together. And it's a set schedule, so if Adam's traveling, he can choose to be here during that time. And then COVID happened, so we didn't cancel it. This was our first month is this month. So last week we did a happy hour. We all stopped work at 4 o'clock. We video conferenced in, had our drinks, and just sat and chatted. And then when Nikita and I were then planning our meetup, which is next week, I was telling her, the quiet people don't get on video, right? Because the more outgoing people are going to be talking more, and kind of, so how can we mitigate that and make sure that that's not happening, that everyone's got fair opportunity to engage and interact with each other. So Nikita does a lot of games with her friends. So because of COVID, she went online and is doing online games. She's like, oh, I have this idea. We can do this online game. She's a facilitator of this game. Everyone calls in on their cell phone, and I'm not going to ruin it for you guys because it's happening next week, but it gives you the opportunity to engage and do something fun, even though we're all in our homes. And so I think that's a good opportunity. Probably a lot of people are doing that now socially, not just at work, but that'll be something we continue to do, and eventually it'll be in person. So.
Yeah, video conferencing, as you said, socially, I think it's picking up everywhere. Also personally, I do so many video calls now with friends and touching bases with sometimes even people I haven't talked to for half a year or longer. And,
Yeah, I think as Adam mentioned, I feel like being virtual is actually bringing us closer together than ever before, really.
Yeah.
Another question. What about the etiquette during webinars? Is there a way staff should dress or act? What is reasonable to expect from my team?
So I'll tell you what not to do. I attended a webinar last week by I figured it to be a well-known company, and the facilitator was eating his sandwich and drinking from a soda bottle. So don't do that. You know, be ready to be on camera. So if your hair's a mess and you don't have your makeup on and that matters to you, then make sure you do that. But also understand that if you don't have an external meeting, if you're gonna have a video meeting with your staff, that it's okay for them to be in a t-shirt because they're at home. So, you know, be respectful as if you were in person. I think it's, with the exception of more casual attire, when you're not on a client call, personally. So I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
I think it really depends on the situation. As you said, in a client call and a formal webinar, you might dress up a little bit more. If it's with your team that you interact daily, hourly, then you're more casual. I think that's the typical, you know, software world, I think.
Yeah.
Here's some good ones. This is related to work-life balance. It's just, do you have any tips in regards to balancing work and home life? And then someone wrote, how do you manage work-life balance? I find myself working longer hours, which is true, when I am working from home than in the office.
So I have a schedule. I have maintained my brick and mortar schedule. I get up at the same time, I walk my dogs, I shower, I eat my breakfast, and I literally tell my husband, okay, I'm going to work. So, and my workspace is dedicated. It's not part of my everyday life, you know. So, and walking away is probably harder than going to work, you know, because it's really easy with the lights still on, the monitors there, and you hear the ding, you know. So, but you just have to balance it as if you were at work and you had to hit the road before traffic or after, you know, traffic died down. So you do work more though. It's more productive. Yeah. Sorry,
I
Nikita.
agree with that. Yeah. I was about to say that you also identify what time of the day you are more productive, and just like how you work or how your schedule works. You know, some people are more productive early in the morning, some people work better at night, and you have this flexibility that, okay, I can have my own schedule as long as I get my stuff done, and when am I most productive, and you can chart your own schedule accordingly, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think even
Go ahead, Adam.
Even if you might work a few hours more than in an office, you're also saving your commute time. And I think working from home comes with a lot of benefits. Also, you can manage your work life yourself. That comes also with some responsibility that you do it. So maybe that's a learning curve that you have, but as Aline said, having maybe a dedicated space for that, ideally even a room where you can close the door, you don't see it anymore. I personally, I have one laptop, but I have two different accounts. I have my work account and my personal account. So I just switch accounts, and then I can manage my time there and decide which email notifications I'd like to see or not.
One thing I've been doing is, since we have everything integrated, everything's also on my phone. Everything like Salesforce, you know, Teams, email, everything. And what I've started doing is turning the notifications off during the weekends or off hours so that I can just kind of focus, because it is that ding, and you get kind of addicted to it. You're like, oh, let me respond now. Oh, this is really quick. And then before you know it, a couple hours have passed. And so it requires that level of discipline, at least for me, that's been helpful. The other thing we started talking about as a leadership team is and I think we're still trying to practice getting better at this, is not sending email out after 4 or 5 p.m. because people will then respond because they're still online and they'll do more work. And so rather use the in Outlook, there's a delay send that you can schedule when it is. And so if you have this itching, you're like, I just need to send out this email, you can delay the sending, even if you're working on the weekends. right? Because we're always connected now, and the tools are constantly pinging, and you just want to still continue to support your team. But at the same time, you do need a break, and it could result in longer hours and just inability to disconnect, because the work life is bleeding into the home life. I also have my own space, and so that's really important. I close my door, and so I have office space that is very separate from the rest of the house, and so I keep that separation. I don't work in the living room, and I don't have lunch in the office, so I kind of split it that way.
I like what you just said, Shauna. I think like having that company culture and just like being conscious of that helps a lot. That okay, after 5 or over weekends, don't send emails or like snooze. Just having that culture overall really helps. And even having more accountability and discipline, I think is really important to have the correct work-life balance, really, if you're working virtually.
I think too, even if you work more, we've all had to go into work on the weekend when you have a tight deadline, and to be able to, if you have to do that at home and be done by 6 or 7 in the morning, and really just free up your day to get that work out of your head. Sometimes you have to meet that deadline, and it's stressful. You got to get up, go to work, so it's nice that it alleviates all that, and you can do it much quicker.
I have another question. Most of the time, the cultural relationship with teammates is diminished because working from home, you're not able to establish personal communication such as eye-to-eye contact. How does your company compensate from this?
Well, we're on video all day, so I don't feel like we don't see each other all the time. We maybe don't see the whole team all the time. It's more one-on-one, or a leadership team, or the admin team, from my perspective. So I'm not on with all the engineers all the time, but having those meetups, I think, will help. And one-on-ones and daily stand-ups, we try to use videos, so we are seeing each other.
Yeah, and I think at first we weren't that diligent with using video, and we started using it recently a lot more. And I feel like our communication has improved significantly, because now you can see each other's faces. If someone's head nodding, like, yeah, I agree, or like, what are you talking about? You can see that, and then you can gauge your conversation and say, oh, okay, Adam has a disagreement here. Let me take a step back. Adam, do you want to chime in? Where when you're not seeing each other face to face, you miss those cues. And so I think video is pretty important to help continue to establish that personal connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in one of my previous companies, I had introduced a virtual water cooler. So every day, about I think 2:45 to 3, there was a 15-minute video room open just for water cooler discussion. So you could get your tea at home and then get online and just chat. I'm having a break. I'm having my tea. Let's see who's having a tea or coffee at the same time as well, and chat about the next movie they want to see or the book they read. So these are then dedicated hours for non-business conversation, so to speak.
Are there any other questions from our audience?
I think we have a question.
Oh, here's one. Any advice on how to work from home and stay physically active?
Well, I am thrilled with the pandemic, because all my favorite Pilates instructors are doing online classes for free. So I'm actually working out more than when, and I don't have to go anywhere. So it can be done in 5 minutes, be on my mat, and live streaming. So, and I walk my dogs every day. Like I said, I keep my schedule. So that's how I stay active. Yeah.
Yep, I have something similar too. I have my Zumba online now, but earlier, like, really, just because you're working from home does not mean you can't go to the gym in the morning or in the evening, or go for a hike, or even go for a hike with your team once a month. You can always schedule something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think being remote or virtual allows you to have that more flexibility, where you have more opportunities, but you still have to be diligent and schedule it in. For me, that's the hardest piece. And so I know if I don't go to the gym in the morning or in the evening, it's not going to happen. And my gym now is virtual as well, so we have CrossFit. that's remote that we do in the evenings, which is kind of fun. But it's recorded. It's recorded. They show us how to do the exercises, and then we just kind of go through the time routine with our smartphones. So.
Yeah, kind of ties back into having the discipline and
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I think someone just asked how to get more info about Beanstock Ventures and what does it take to partner with your company.
So how to get in contact with us, we're here. And to get more information, you can visit our website at www.beanstockventures.com. There's a contact page there. There's a flyer there. But if you need anything, we're a consulting company, so not everything's available on the website. So if you have a specific need or specific project or specific idea, it's best to just reach out, and we can schedule a 30-minute consultation and understand, what your project needs are versus what our skill sets are, and where we can help kind of drive that, whatever it might be. And so our focus areas in software product development, and the regulatory aspects of that for instrumentation, medical devices, clinical support software, those type of things. So thank you for asking. Any other questions? Any last minute comments from our panelists? Okay.
Well, all I can say is I like being in a virtual company, right? This is gives you a lot of freedom. Maybe takes time to get used to it, but I feel like right now in the COVID-19 area, there are a lot of people forced to work from home and be in that situation where they did not plan to be, right? So I think that if you have friends maybe like that, and you come from high tech where virtual or remote work is more common, maybe reach out to them and see if you can help your neighbors who might not be as tech savvy, that they can set up a video call maybe with some friends.
Yeah. I think we are ahead of the curve really in that regard. We have been virtual before COVID crisis, and I think a lot of bigger companies are now really struggling to have their teams perform efficiently while they are working remotely. I know I've seen teams like really struggling because they don't know how to use tools effectively, and they just don't have the setup ready. And we are already there. We just work this way. So.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think definitely it will change the world, right? People will be more automated. They'll be more in the cloud. They'll have less paper. They'll have leaner processes, and they'll have cloud-based ways to do things. I mean, I can't. We were lucky that first day it all started, and we're all at work on talking to each other while everyone else is figuring out how are they going to get their computer home and set up and access, and
and the tools don't always work, right? So we do have failures. We have the internet goes down for someone. We always have some sort of issue. And I don't want to say always, but there is always still an opportunity where something can go wrong. It's not flawless every time. But we've learned to just pivot. Like we've done that so much. If the internet goes down, it's like, okay, well, let's switch to this. Okay, well, let's wait for Shauna to go online. Okay, well, let's call her, because we have the tools like the Teams is used for collaboration and video conferencing. If it goes down, like my internet goes down, I can switch on my phone and then just add on to the meeting like right away. Like if nothing even happened, it takes me a second. And so we've been able to do that. And so we're pretty effective even when the technology doesn't work for us. We have already other avenues to connect, right? We don't just have Teams, we also have Zoom. We don't have everyone doesn't have an account, but we have a couple of Zoom accounts. So we switch to that if we need to, depending on the type of collaboration we're doing. We have different mediums that we can use to communicate. And so that's been really, really helpful, is being able to transition very quickly on a different tool set, communication channel or something if something goes down.
I think one more advantage that we have really is we are able to hire the best talent from literally everywhere around the world. So
yeah, it gives us that opportunity to recruit. And I think, I think, Eileen, you mentioned this, right? When there's job ads out there before, when it's like virtual or remote, you're like, is this job even real, right? What does that actually mean? And, how am I going to do this remotely when my boss is like over here? I think all that's going to shift. I was reading an article, like a survey that was done that said about 55% of employees want to continue this work environment. They feel like they can work remote and they feel like they can do their job effectively and they don't have to be in the office. And so I think there's going to be a push for employees to start expecting this as one of kind of the job perks, or even the expectation that depending on the type of job, especially in technology, that they're able to work remotely. I mean, software is just, I won't say the easiest, but software is one of the first ones where you can kind of look at, okay, yeah, we have the tools, we are virtual by nature, we should be able to still continue to collaborate and to innovate even if we're virtual. Okay, well, thank you to our panelists and to our attendees. I hope you enjoyed our webinar. So in a few days, we'll send this out. We'll also send you some additional information. One plug I just want to put in there is when I was building this company, I didn't do it on my own. I didn't like just all of a sudden know how to create this virtual company. I used Zapier. Zapier is a software development company that does integration, and they're completely virtual. And if you go to their www.zapier.com, they have a handbook that they've created and they keep up to date. It's like, I don't know, how many pages is it, Eileen? It's pretty
400.
thick.
It's like this thick.
Yeah, it's very thick, but it's online as well. And you can kind of go through any topic that you have or any concern and kind of read on how they solved it. And I'm not sure what their size is now. I think they're much bigger than they were when I started. But that's what I kind of used as a model. I was thinking, okay, they were able to do this and they've been successful. I'm gonna try to follow the same. Obviously, our culture is very different, and the way we do things, because we work with clients, it's probably a little bit different and unique. But at the same time, it gives you a good idea of like maybe some things that they've encountered and some solutions that they came up with. Just that might be something helpful to look at as a resource. Okay, so everyone have a great evening, and obviously stay safe and healthy. I'm glad those of you that joined us were able to attend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
Good evening.
Thanks.
Bye. Have a good evening. Bye.